I'm going to talk a little bit about horses that have been in my life, some of the central ones. I've been very fortunate over my life to ride hundreds of horses, but these are the ones I either owned or were, something special to me. Hey, all this is Pico. I had him as a little kid. He was my first horse. Before that, he belonged to my mom, and she got him when she was 7. So he was an old horse when I rode him. He lived to be in his mid 30s, and I thought he was the coolest thing that ever was. So this is Dot. I had her after I had Pico. My parents bought both Dot and Spot. They were matched brother and sister, a pair of horses from Cleo McCracken. I always rode Dot, and my older brother Hugh always rode Spot. The Paint, that's a horse we had down there at the ranch called Chief, and my younger brother Mark, that was his horse when he was a little kid. All three of them were great horses, and we did quite a few parades with them back then. My grandfather raised purebred Morgan horses, and Little Brother was a horse he gave to me when I was pretty little. It was before I had Dot, but I never actually got to ride him. But he was registered in my name, and he was my very first horse that was officially mine. This was Bay Lady. I was showing her at the Tri-County Fair. She was a horse, again, a Morgan that my granddad raised, that they put a lot of money into. They sent her to a trainer in Southern California, and they showed her locally and in Southern California. But I rode her kind of in my high school years, and she was a really nice mare. This was Twink. Her official name was Twinkle Lady. Again, another registered Morgan horse. Ray Klein started her. I probably rode her probably my later high school years and college years. It was a big deal that when I got her that she had been a horse that Ray had ridden a lot, and when he told me I could start riding her, I thought I was pretty cool. This is Mule. She was quite a beast. She was the first animal I ever started. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I tied her to a fence a few times, put a saddle on, and I just stepped on her when she was tied to the fence. Why she didn't kill me, I don't know. But she was actually kind of a replacement for a little mule foal we had that Twink had had, and that little foal was born with pasterns that wouldn't hold her up and or hold him up, and we cast those at the vet hospital. I stayed up literally 24 hours a day along with Dr. Lind and nursed Twink or milked Twink and then fed that little colt, and it finally just gave up and died. It was a real heartbreaker. This is just a picture of Twink and me leading Mule on a trip up into Coyote where we kept our cattle in the summer. This is old Louie. His official name was Desert Louie. I got him from Louie Iribarren on my 21st birthday. Mom and I went down to the Iribarren Ranch and drove through the colts with Louie, and this is a horse that we ended up buying. I started him. He's the first horse I started in the Cal Poly colt breaking class. One thing I remember is Louie told me we didn't have to pay for him until I finished college because college was most important. Anyway, Louie had more character than any horse I ever knew. Don Bedell at the pack station in Mineral King where I worked would introduce Louie to the guests and they said, before your trip is over, you'll know this horse. And he was a special animal. This is a mare I named Lacey. John Lacey hired me to start her for him, and I had her at San Luis Obispo. I was in Cal Poly, and we lived out at Gentilini's, which was out in Los Osos Valley. I was rooming with Jeff Honeywell at the time. She was a really nice mare. I spent 5 summers working for Don Bedell at Mineral King Pack Station, and we literally lived with the horses and mules, and they were all part of my life. And this was Jack. He was probably my most favorite. He liked everything from peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to peaches. It didn't matter what it was. He was a chow hound, but he had a lot of character. When he got old, I talked to Don. We were going to bring him back to my ranch or our ranch here in Bishop to retire, but he passed away before that happened. But I loved old Jack, and he was a big mule. Pony was part of 3 horses we got from Pat Russell when I came back to our ranch in 1984, I think it was. And he was as a good a horse as ever was. One of the crazy things that happened, I had roped a bull on our ranch one time for, I don't remember why, to get it from one field to another. And I roped him and I somehow lost my rope during the ruckus, and I decided to get off and pick up my rope, and about the time I got on the ground, that bull came after me, and I got Pony between me and the bull, and that bull was ramming Pony in the belly and lifting him off the ground. And I knew my situation wasn't real good. Pony should have left, but he never did. And there was a gate close by. I made a run for that gate, and that bull took after me. And about the time I hit the gate, I had my hand on the forehead of that bull. I ducked off to the right as I went through the gate, and the bull kept on going. But I don't remember how I got the rope off, but Pony was a really solid horse. I rode him one summer in Mineral King. You can see in that one photo we're at Black Rock Pass at 11,600 feet. I'll tell you what, that was a cold and foggy day. As I mentioned, we got 3 horses when I came back to the ranch in the 80s. That was Pat, Cheyenne, and Pony. And I don't have a picture of Cheyenne. He was a pretty cool horse. He was kind of standoffish. We had an intern working for us for a while named Cheryl Ayers, and she rode Cheyenne a lot. I sold Cheyenne to my cousin Mary Mears, and poor old Cheyenne died from sand colic shortly after Mary got him. But the only horse I ever sold, and he died. So I've never had to sell another horse. This photo is of Dingy. He's the almost solid bay colt. And then standing there with Louie. Both of them are pretty young. Dingy was a registered Morgan. He came from Elmer and Mary and Benty. And he had a kind of a strange story. He'd been at their ranch in a pen for over 2 years and never really been touched. He kind of was dragging a rope. You could sort of kind of handle him, but he was not very friendly. And they told me I could have him if I could get him caught and get him home. So I did that. We took him down to the ranch. I turned him out in one of the big pastures and got to notice, and he was standing out in this field by himself a few days later, and I went out there, and he would not drink out of the stream that ran through there, or the ditch that ran through the field. He was an odd horse. Ended up giving him to Pete Saragusa, a friend of mine, and Pete started him in the colt class, the same class I started Louie in. He was he was quite a character. He was really timid. So first summer we brought him back to Bishop. I talked to Dr. Lind about it. The other horses were running him off, and he couldn't eat in the hay manger. So Doc Lind says, let's give him some testosterone. So we started injecting him. We turned him into this monster. And so we abandoned that project. Pete had him until he was a very old horse, and he had a great life, and he died with my friend Pete. Pete didn't die, but he died while he was living with Pete. So anyway, he was quite a horse. His real name was Ian M. Banner, and Benty's never thought it was very funny that we named him Dingy. Dynamite was the first horse I ever started for anybody else. Louis Baron asked me to start him. And I had Dino the same time I was working with Pat, Cheyenne, and Pony. I had my 4-string of horses, and Dino was a really cool horse. I picked this photo to represent the teams I got to work with. I spent quite a bit of time with Lee Rozier. He and Dave Hoover and I lived together on our ranch when I came home. I worked for Lee doing sleigh rides and stuff, and then we got to feed one winter down there on our ranch with the teams. And we had Jimmy and Bud, who we were starting, and Ma, who was kind of the tried and true old draft horse, and we'd hook those colts up with Ma. But anyway, I got to drive a lot of teams up there with Lee. It was a lot of fun for me. After we sold our ranch, I went to Texas and worked for Pard Klein at the Shelton Ranch. And Bobby Shelton, who ran that ranch, was part of the King Ranch family. His mother was a Clayburgh, and he was a general manager at King Ranch for a while. And then he moved to Kerrville and started this cutting horse operation. I went down there to work for Pard starting colts. I started over 75 colts in 2 seasons down there at Shelton Ranch, and between a couple other places. The least I started was 8 in a day, and the most I started in a day was 14. Those colts came right out of pasture. Pard had a method he taught us. We rode them the very first day we brought him in. It was quite an experience. But Biggin kind of represents all those colts, and he was a kind and gentle horse. He was by Leonard Milligan. Most of the colts we started down there were by Doc Hickory or Doc Quixote, and a lot of them Leonard Milligans. But I liked old Biggin. He represents all those horses. Pard Klein was probably the best man I ever worked for, or at least one of them, and he treated me really well. He was my boss there at Shelton Ranch. Our families have been friends forever, but the Shelton Ranch ran into money problems, and it actually all finally went away. But when I left there, I had really wanted to show a cutting horse, and Pard loaned me his really good cutter, Old Westy. I went to work for Phil Feinberg in Paso Robles, and Phil helped me learn how to show and work with cutting horses. This shot's over at well, it's in Cuyama at a Central Coast Cutting Horse Association. But old Westy was 17 when I started showing him, and he was really cool. It was a year I had old Westy. It was a lifetime experience that I'll never forget, and I owe Pard a great deal for that loan of a horse. Pat was part of that trio I mentioned that I got when I come back to Bishop to manage the ranch. When I ended up going back to the grad school, I took Pat back there my last year. And that's where I ran into Roy Yates. And Roy Yates helped me take old Pat, who was just a ranch horse. He was 17. And in a year later, we were showing him in the rookie reining it down at Parker, Colorado. Pat, I don't think he ever went into a show where he didn't place, and we did some amazing things, and it was a lot of fun. But I owe Roy Yates a lot for what he taught me. Sonny was a horse I got from Roy Yates. I got him the year I graduated there at CSU with my doctorate. There's no kinder horse ever lived than old Sonny, and he's the horse I first did my true reiner by myself with a lot of help from Roy. But we did a lot of shows. We did really well. He qualified for the World Show 4 times, and I showed him quite a bit. And he was a fun horse to show. First time I took him to Fallon to a Nevada reining horse, might have been a quarter horse show up there. Um, Barbara Hodges came up to me. I didn't know her at the time after the show, and she said, "That is one stopping machine," and that he was. He'd stop anywhere. Squirt was a horse that I got from Roy too, so I could go to the fraternity. We didn't do real well, and Squirty and I, we just didn't hit it off. I don't know how to put that. He was a nice horse, but our personalities didn't match. But he ended up going to Shayna Allison, and she loved him. He had an untimely end. He broke both his hind legs. It was a terrible thing, but he got to have a good time with Shayna, and he was a kind horse. I wish I could redo old Squirty. Cat, or Cataroo as we called him, was a horse I got from Roy Yates. Again, Roy called me up, told me I have to have this horse, or you have to have this horse. He's a grandson of Hollywood Dunnett. I showed him for a little while locally. I could never get him to stop. He went off to have second careers with a couple girls here locally. One of them was Laura Stickles, and the other one was Jordan Boxley. And he's back at my house now. He had uveitis, and he's now a one-eyed horse, but he's doing my old buddy Enoch. There's no horse I can say I love more than this horse. He's got some personality quirks a lot of people wouldn't appreciate, but I think he's the coolest thing. I almost didn't get him. Ronnie Iribarren talked me into this project. I'd kind of given up on horses, and Ronnie says you need to breed your old stud and get one colt for him from him. So at 19 years old Sonny went down to Iribarren Ranch, and Ronnie picked a mare out called Regret, and I didn't think we'd ever get a colt, but we did. And this little horse has let me live my dream. We've won some big things. We've had some big disappointments, but there is no other way to say that he's my best buddy in the world. I just can't express how much this little horse means to me. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little video. I thought I'd try something different with the recording idea. I wish I could have figured out how to not have my video inserted, but I just have the audio, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. But it's okay. I've had a couple people here lately say that they enjoy these videos that show Enoch and I out and about and stuff with my horses, and or some of those comments have come from people who are cooped up because of this lovely virus thing we got going on. So I thought I'd try this. I'm not trying to say I've done a whole lot of stuff or anything more than other people with their horses, and I think we all have, who are involved with horses, really love the animals that come into our lives. And this is just kind of my story of those special horses that I got to have. I feel extremely lucky being with a lot of the animals I got to be with, and some of them are truly amazing. And sometimes I was noticing when I went back, I didn't want to redo this. I talk about the horses as in the past, but Sonny's still kicking. He's 27. He's a little bunged up, but I turned him out in the arena this weekend. He took off running like a crazy horse. And I have Enoch. He's 7. He'll be around a long time, and I've got Cat there, and he's 15. We got big plans for Enoch and Cat to do some freestyling. I hope we get to do that. I have a really cool routine I want to do. Anyway, thanks for following along on these videos I do. I hope you enjoy them. This one's a little different. I don't like much looking at my mug. There I am right there, but you can live through it. And I might do some more of these later on. Talk to you later. Bye.